Cara Gormont is the former chief of staff for the Defense Health Agency. She dedicated her career to helping keep service members healthy. Then, in November 2020, Gormont developed long COVID. She learned firsthand that the military at the time had no process to deal with it.
Truly felt very abandoned by the healthcare system that I had, at that time given 28 years of my life into fixing. And nobody believed me. Nobody believed that I was sick. Nobody believed that I had COVID.
A year and a half later, she's still experiencing an ever-changing wave of symptoms. Those include gastrointestinal problems and brain fog.
And my doctors themselves didn't know what was going on. I didn't have an established plan of care with them. They didn't necessarily agree what was happening.
Gormont says she tried to keep working. She couldn't keep up with the demands of the job. She wanted to take medical leave, but found that difficult. She says she felt judged by her colleagues and that maybe she wasn't tough enough to push through her illness. Eventually, she left the military.
It was traumatic. I'll just say that. It was a heavy, heavy trauma that I'm going to live with for the rest of my life, to be alone and abandoned.
Although Gormont is the senior-most official we spoke to, she is far from alone. About half a dozen people on active duty across the armed forces spoke to us anonymously out of fear of retaliation. They said they worry that if they seek help for their cases of long COVID, the military will force them out of their jobs. That's echoed by recent reporting from the Army Times, in which some soldiers said the same thing. Pentagon leaders say troops with long COVID should come forward. The Defense Department says it has the resources to help, including physical, emotional, and cognitive treatments. Air Force Colonel Jennifer Garrison is the Assistant Director of Staff for the Defense Health Agency.
The good news is a long COVID clinic has been established in San Antonio, where there is a high population of Department of Defense beneficiaries. We are also managing many individuals in primary care, mental health clinics, and other specialties based on symptoms related to COVID.
The military is also continuing to study the problem. Last year, the Naval Medical Research Center began researching the long-term effects of the virus on Marines. Kathy Morgenstern runs Survivor Corps, a group for people who've dealt with COVID-19. She says that with time, the military seems to be learning more.
It seems like the military is actually coming around and understanding that there's something called long COVID and people suffering so much from their symptoms from that they're allowing people that are in the military actually take time off. At least that's what we've seen from our side.
Morgenstern says it's good that the military is researching long COVID, but that doesn't do a lot for service members who are dealing with it right now. The Pentagon has not released statistics on how many troops have long COVID symptoms. In New York, I'm Andy Hirschfeld. IRS scams on the rise this morning. The Internal Revenue Service put a moratorium in place that could hurt some small business owners. On Thursday, the federal agency announced a hold on new employee retention credit claims until the end of the year. The IRS says this is because of a massive surge in improper filings. In shorthand, it's called the ERC. The program was intended to help small businesses stay afloat during the COVID-19 pandemic. It did that with tax credits for companies that kept payroll going, even if operations either halted or were partially suspended. The IRS points out that there was a flood of claims brought by what the agency has referred to as aggressive promoters. Allegedly, these groups often pushed well-meaning business owners to file claims when they were not even eligible for them. In return, these promoters would get a contingency fee. The IRS reportedly paid out a staggering $230 billion already. The moratorium applies to applications sent after this past Thursday. Earlier applications will still be reviewed, and there's apparently 600,000 of them. The agency is allowing some businesses to withdraw their applications if they want to. The moratorium does not end the program. It buys the agency some time. This to put in place some new safeguards. Applications will reopen on January 1st. In New York, I'm Eddie Hirschfeld reporting.
China and the United States have pledged to work together to control the global temperature rise. The two sides released a joint statement on their efforts to address climate change. Climate's a major topic at the APEC week in San Francisco as world leaders converge and onlookers eye the developments in the energy sector and the growing electric vehicle marketplace. Andy Hirschfeld reports.
This week, leaders will discuss the future of sustainability in the region, looking specifically at alternative energy sources. The U.S. and China are two major leaders in the sector. Now, China specifically has led the globe in solar tech manufacturing. Because of U.S. President Joe Biden's focus on developing America's electric vehicle network, experts believe this is a key place for increased cooperation between the two nations. Here's Stuart McIntosh, Executive Director for the think tank Group of 30.
You've got Xi and Biden meeting for the first time in a year. Tensions are very high between the two countries, and yet the reality is they do need to both act on climate change goals to secure their own national goals.
It's not just Biden. California Governor Gavin Newsom recently took a trip to China. This was in efforts to find new ways to collaborate. Here's what the governor said in a video released by his office.
We have to define the terms of the future. We have to live together across our differences. I don't want to see this relationship deteriorate. There is no solution to the climate change crisis without the cooperation of China.
During his trip, he toured Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory. The governor also saw an offshore wind farm. Newsom signed climate pledges with several different provinces across China. McIntosh sees this as a promising development.
I see positive steps. Would I like them to be faster? Yes, but I'm modestly pleased with the direction we're headed in, but we need to speed up.
Meanwhile, sustainability efforts have been overshadowed by fossil fuels. Coal and natural gas still remain top of mind as the global north heads into the colder winter months. China is the world's largest producer of coal, and the United States leads the world in natural gas production. This comes amid those ongoing supply chain strains and OPEC production cuts. In June, the group of oil-producing nations kept cuts in place through the end of the year, and that means that other world powers have had to pick up the slack in the global market. This comes alongside the surging electric vehicle marketplace. The sector saw key growth in the United States, China, and in South Korea in recent years. The Biden administration put in place incentives as well for automakers to build more EVs stateside. Meanwhile, China ramped up its own domestic offerings. The country's NEV market is likely to expand at a compound annual growth rate of around 38% from 2021 to 2025, with the total market size reaching 13 million units in 2025. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Andy Hirschfeld, reporting from New York. More layoffs this morning, this time at Anheuser-Busch. The beer maker will cut 2% of its workforce. That means 380 people will lose their jobs. The move comes after 2 months of declining sales amid right-wing boycotts. That was in response to a marketing campaign. The move meant Bud Light lost its moniker as the top-selling beer in the United States. Now to the world of artificial intelligence. Netflix under fire this morning. The streaming giant posted a new job for a person to lead the company's AI efforts. The job would pay around $900,000 annually. The move has been met with backlash. Both writers and actors are on the picket line right now as both groups demand protection from AI, which they say could erode their work. The Securities and Exchange Commission making moves this morning. The SEC just put in place new guidelines for companies. Will now require organizations to report if they were victim to a cyber attack within 4 days of the event. More than 500 different companies as well as organizations were victims of cyber attacks in recent months. MasterCard at odds with the cannabis industry this morning. The company has asked dispensaries not to accept their debit cards for payment. The move is in line with most other large consumer banks. The move is a major blow to the industry, which is gaining legal momentum across the country. A number of states have legalized the substance for medicinal and recreational use. It is still illegal, though, on the federal level. In New York, I'm Andy Hirschfeld reporting.